If you think AAA games are the only ones that can blow your mind, you're about to change your opinion today. Because I'm not talking about the big marketing titles here. I'm talking about hidden single-player games that quietly hit way harder than most so-called blockbusters. Games that don't scream for attention, but once you play them, they just stick with you. And yeah, some of these will honestly surprise you. So in this video, I'm breaking down 25 hidden single-player games that feel way better than AAA games in terms of immersion, story, and pure gameplay experience. These are the kind of games you randomly discover and end up remembering for years. The first one is Kingdom Come, Deliverance, and honestly, this game doesn't even feel like a game at first. It feels like you got dropped straight into medieval life. No flashy magic, no superpowers, just raw, realistic survival in a brutal world. And that's what makes it hit different. You start as a nobody, and even basic things like fighting or reading feel like a challenge you actually have to learn. It's slow, yeah, but in a way that pulls you in deeper the longer you stay with it. The world feels alive in a very grounded way, like every village has its own rhythm, and every decision actually matters. There's this weird satisfaction when you finally get good at it, like you earned every small win instead of the game handing it to you. And once it clicks, you stop thinking about it as just a game, and more like an experience you're living through. And trust me, we're just getting started. Because the next hidden gems on this list go in completely different directions, and some of them will genuinely surprise you. GreedFall is one of those games you don't really hear people talk about much. But when you actually jump in, it feels like stepping into a forgotten fantasy world that has way more personality than you expected. It gives you that classic RPG vibe where choices actually matter, and you're not just running from quest marker to quest marker, you're shaping how people react to you and how the world slowly opens up around your decisions. The setting itself feels unique too, like colonial-era fantasy mixed with magic, political tension, and mystery all sitting together in one place, and it actually works way better than it sounds. What really pulls you in is how flexible everything feels. You can talk your way out of situations, sneak through problems, or just go full combat if things go wrong. And none of it feels forced. It's not overly polished like big AAA RPGs, but that's exactly where its charm comes from. You start noticing how your choices actually shift relationships between factions, and suddenly even small decisions start feeling heavy. There's this slow burn immersion where you don't even realize it, but you've gotten attached to the world and the politics inside it. After spending some time in it, you start appreciating how rare games like this are. Ones that don't try to overwhelm you with scale, but instead focus on giving you freedom in a smaller, more meaningful world. And once that clicks, you're already hooked without even noticing. A Plague Tale. Innocence is one of those games that doesn't try to impress you with loud action or constant chaos, but somehow ends up hitting way harder emotionally than most big-budget titles. From the moment you step into it, everything feels heavy in a quiet way. You're not playing as a powerful hero, you're just trying to survive with two kids in a world that feels completely broken by war and disease, and that's what makes it stick with you. The bond between Amisha and Hugo is really the heart of it. You're not just protecting a character, you actually feel responsible for him. Every step forward feels risky, every shadow feels unsafe, and when things go wrong, it actually stresses you out in a real way. Then there are the rats. And honestly, they're not just enemies, they're like this moving force of nature that completely changes how you think about space and light in the game. You're constantly planning, staying in the light, and trying not to get overwhelmed. What makes it even stronger is how personal everything feels. It's not about saving the world in a big heroic way, it's about surviving one brutal moment after another, just trying to keep your small piece of family alive. And by the time you get deeper into it, you realize this isn't just a game you're playing for fun, it's one of those stories that actually stays in your head long after you close it.
Outsiders! Oh no, quickly! The ladder, go and climb, you first!
Days Gone is one of those games that didn't really get the love it deserved at launch, but when you actually spend time with it, you realize it has something really special going on. At first, it feels like your typical open-world survival game, but the more you play, the more it pulls you into this lonely, broken world that feels surprisingly real. You're not rushing through it, you're just surviving in it, and that slow burn starts to hit differently after a while. Deacon St. John as a character also grows on you more than you expect. He's not trying to be a perfect hero or anything like that. He just feels human, dealing with loss, anger, and survival in a world that doesn't care about anyone anymore. Riding your bike across long, empty roads becomes this weirdly calming thing, especially when the weather changes and the world feels even more alive and unpredictable. And then suddenly, you run into a horde, and everything flips. It's pure panic, like your brain goes into survival mode instantly. That mix of calm exploration and sudden chaos is what makes the game so addictive. What really stays with you is how personal everything feels. It's not just about killing zombies or clearing camps, it's about slowly piecing together a life that was taken away from you. And the more you progress, the more the world starts feeling like something you actually understand, not just a map you're clearing. Mad Max is one of those games that quietly surprises you because you don't expect much at first. But once you get into it, it starts pulling you deeper than it should. It drops you into this dry, broken wasteland where everything feels abandoned, and at first it's just you, your car, and endless empty roads. But somehow that emptiness becomes the whole vibe, and it starts feeling weirdly immersive instead of boring. The car is honestly the heart of everything here. Every upgrade you add, every fight you survive on the road, it all makes your ride feel more like your identity in this world. Driving across the desert, hearing the engine struggle, then suddenly getting chased by enemy vehicles turns into pure chaos in the best way. Combat feels raw too, like every punch, every car takedown has weight behind it. It's not flashy, it's not over-designed, it's just survival in a brutal world where everything wants to take you down. And what makes it stick is how simple it is at its core. You're not chasing some huge complicated story twist every 5 minutes. You're just surviving, upgrading, and slowly becoming stronger in a world that doesn't care about you at all. But the more you play, the more that simplicity turns into something addictive. It starts feeling like you actually belong in that wasteland. After spending time in Mad Max, you start realizing how underrated it really is. Because it doesn't try to compete with big AAA storytelling, it just builds its own identity and lets you live inside it. The Forgotten City is one of those games that starts quietly, almost like you've stepped into a normal mystery, and then suddenly it pulls you into something way deeper than you expected. You wake up in this ancient Roman-style city where something feels off from the very first conversation. Everyone is polite, everyone is watching each other, and you quickly realize there's something seriously wrong hiding underneath all of it. What makes it so addictive is the time loop. You keep reliving the same day, but every loop changes how you understand the people around you. You start picking up tiny details, noticing lies, connecting conversations that didn't make sense before. It feels less like playing a game and more like slowly solving a puzzle where every answer opens another question. And the best part is how your choices actually matter. One small decision can completely shift what happens next, and suddenly you're stuck thinking, wait, I should have done that differently. The atmosphere is what really carries it, though. The city feels alive but trapped at the same time, like everyone is pretending everything is fine, while something terrible is just beneath the surface. As you go deeper, it stops feeling like a simple mystery and turns into this moral question where you're constantly deciding what's right, what's necessary, and what you're willing to sacrifice to break the loop. By the time things start connecting, you realize this isn't just a puzzle game. It's a story that messes with your decisions in a way that actually stays with you. Hellblade. Senua's Sacrifice is not the kind of game you just play and forget. From the very first minute, it feels different, almost uncomfortable in a way that pulls you straight into Senua's mind. You're not just watching her story, you're inside it, and everything she hears and sees starts feeling like it's happening to you too. What really makes it stand out is the way it handles her mental struggle. The voices in her head are constant, sometimes guiding you, sometimes messing with you, and sometimes just making you doubt everything you're doing. It's not used as a gimmick, it becomes part of the gameplay itself. You start feeling that pressure, that confusion, that fear of not knowing what's real and what isn't. And that's where the immersion gets intense in a way most big games never even attempt. The journey itself feels personal and heavy. It's not about saving the world, it's about Senua trying to face her trauma and push through something that feels bigger than her. The environments reflect that too, shifting between haunting beauty and pure psychological tension. Every step forward feels meaningful, like you're slowly moving through her pain instead of just completing levels. And by the end, it doesn't just feel like you finished a game, it feels like you experienced something raw and emotional that stays in your head long after you stop playing. ELEX is one of those games that feels a bit rough around the edges at first, but if you stick with it, it slowly opens up into something really unique. It drops you into this strange post-apocalyptic world where science and fantasy collide in the weirdest way. One moment you're dealing with high-tech weapons, and the next you're facing creatures that feel straight out of a dark fantasy world. That mix sounds odd on paper, but in-game it actually gives the world its own identity. What really stands out is how unforgiving it is. You don't start as a powerful hero at all. In fact, early on, you'll feel weak, underprepared, and honestly, a bit lost. Even basic fights can punish you hard if you're not careful, but that's also what makes progression feel so satisfying. Every small upgrade, every skill you unlock, it actually matters. You feel yourself getting stronger in a very noticeable way, not just on paper. The world itself is open and full of freedom. You can join different factions, each with their own style and philosophy, and your choices actually shape how people treat you. Exploration feels raw and unfiltered, like the game trusts you to figure things out instead of holding your hand all the time. That can be frustrating at times, but it also makes discoveries feel more rewarding. And once you get used to its style, ELEX starts to feel like one of those hidden RPGs that doesn't try to be polished like big AAA titles. Instead, it builds its own identity, and if it clicks with you, it really sticks. The Callisto Protocol is one of those games that tries to pull you into pure survival horror, and for the most part, it really commits to that dark, uncomfortable atmosphere. From the moment you step into that prison on Callisto, everything feels tight, claustrophobic, and honestly kind of hopeless. You're not meant to feel powerful here, you're meant to feel trapped. What really stands out is the tension in every encounter. Even simple corridors feel dangerous because you never know what's waiting around the corner. Combat is slow, heavy, and very close range, so every fight feels personal. You're not spraying bullets from a distance, you're struggling just to stay alive in close combat where timing actually matters. And when things go wrong, they go wrong fast. The atmosphere does a lot of the heavy lifting too. The lighting, the sounds, the silence between encounters, it all builds this constant feeling of dread. You're always listening, always cautious, and even when nothing is happening, your brain keeps expecting something to jump out. That kind of tension doesn't let you relax, and that's exactly what it's going for. It's not a perfect game, and it definitely had mixed reactions, but if you're someone who enjoys slow, gritty survival horror, it still manages to deliver some genuinely intense moments. The kind that stick in your head because of how uncomfortable they felt while you were playing.
What the fuck was that?
Mafia. Definitive Edition is one of those games that instantly pulls you into a different era without even trying too hard. From the first few minutes, it feels like you've stepped into the 1930s, where every street, every car, and every conversation has that old-school crime movie energy. It's not just about missions, it feels like you're living inside a classic gangster story. What really hits is the pacing. This game doesn't rush you. It lets you breathe in the world, drive through the city, and actually feel like part of it. And then when things kick off, they hit hard. Shootouts feel grounded, not flashy, and every situation feels like it has weight behind it. You're not an overpowered character, you're just a guy climbing deeper into a dangerous world where every decision matters. The story is what really keeps you locked in, though. It's simple on the surface, but the way it builds relationships, loyalty, and consequences makes everything feel personal. You start off thinking it's just another crime game, but slowly, it turns into something way more emotional than you expect. There are moments where you just sit back after a mission and think about what just happened, because it doesn't always go the way you want it to. And by the end, it doesn't feel like you just finished a game. It feels like you watched a full crime drama unfold where you were actually part of it.
Me neither. Okay, so Little Italy. Now. Your night's not over.
Kenna, Bridge of Spirits, is one of those games that looks simple at first glance, but the moment you start playing it, you realize it has this really calm, emotional energy running through everything. It feels like stepping into a beautiful animated movie where nature, spirits, and mystery all exist in the same space, and somehow it all just fits together perfectly. What really stands out is how peaceful the world feels, even when things get intense. You're exploring forests, ruins, and forgotten places that feel alive in their own quiet way. And then you have these little spirit companions called Rot that follow you around, and honestly, they add so much charm to the experience. They're not just for show either. They actually help you in combat and puzzles, and watching them interact with the world always feels satisfying. Combat itself is surprisingly solid too. It starts off simple, but as you progress, it becomes more about timing, positioning, and using your abilities smartly. It never feels overwhelming, but it does keep you engaged. And every boss fight feels like a small emotional peak rather than just another fight. What makes Kena special is the balance between beauty and emotion. One moment you're just exploring a peaceful area, and the next you're dealing with deeper, more emotional themes about loss and healing. It doesn't rush you through anything, it just lets you feel the journey. And by the time you finish it, it's one of those games that quietly stays with you, not because it's loud or flashy, but because it feels genuinely heartfelt from start to end. Biomutant is one of those games that feels like a wild experiment from the start, like someone mixed kung fu action, open-world exploration, and a talking narrator all into one strange but interesting package. And honestly, the first thing you notice is how different it looks and feels compared to most AAA games. It's colorful, weird, and kind of unpredictable in a good way. You start off in a broken world full of mutated creatures, and right away the game gives you freedom to shape your character in a pretty unique way. Your build actually changes how you fight, and combat feels like a mix of martial arts, guns, and special abilities all happening at once. It's not super polished, but it has this fast, chaotic rhythm that keeps you engaged once you get used to it. What really makes Biomutant stand out is the world itself. It's not just empty open space. It feels like a living ecosystem that's reacting to your choices. You can explore, upgrade, and interact with different tribes, and your decisions actually affect how the world evolves around you. Sometimes it feels light and playful, and other times it gets surprisingly serious in its tone. And yeah, the narrator is always there, which is a bit unusual at first, but it slowly becomes part of the game's personality. It gives everything this storybook-style feel, like you're being told a legend while actually living it. In the end, Biomutant is not perfect, but it's definitely different, and sometimes that's exactly what makes a game memorable long after you stop playing. The Ascent is one of those games that instantly hits you with atmosphere before anything else even happens. From the moment you step into that world, it feels like you've been dropped into a massive cyberpunk city that never sleeps. Neon lights everywhere, crowded streets stacked on top of each other, and this constant feeling that the world is huge, but you're just a small piece of it trying to survive. What makes it really stand out is how alive the environment feels. Even though it's top-down, the detail is insane. Every corner of the city feels packed with movement, chaos, and life. You're constantly walking through areas that feel like they have their own stories happening in the background. It's not just a map, it feels like a functioning world that doesn't care about you at all. Combat is fast and chaotic in a good way. It's not just standing still and shooting, it's movement, cover, abilities, and trying not to get overwhelmed when things explode into full chaos. And when it clicks, it becomes really addictive. You start planning fights better, upgrading your gear, and slowly getting more comfortable in a world that always feels a bit dangerous. What really keeps you going, though, is the vibe. That cyberpunk atmosphere, the music, the lighting, everything just locks together perfectly. It's not trying to be a giant cinematic AAA experience, but it still manages to feel incredibly immersive in its own way. And once you spend enough time in it, the Ascent starts feeling less like just another action RPG and more like a deep dive into a brutal, glowing city that you don't really belong in, but can't stop exploring. Trepang 2 is one of those games that feels like it was made for pure chaos, in the best possible way. From the first few minutes, you can already tell this isn't trying to be slow or realistic. It throws you into a world where everything is fast, violent, and completely over the top, and somehow it just works perfectly if you're into high-speed action. The combat is where it really shines. You move like a machine, sliding, slow-motion dodging, and clearing rooms in seconds if you play it right. It gives you that main character energy without ever slowing you down. One moment you're sneaking through a dark facility, and the next you're breaking into full bullet time chaos, wiping out enemies before they even react. It's intense, but in a really satisfying way. What makes it even better is how responsive everything feels. Shooting, movement, abilities, everything connects smoothly, so when you mess up, you know it's on you. But when you get into the flow, it feels unstoppable. Like you've completely taken control of the fight instead of just reacting to it. The atmosphere is also surprisingly strong for such a fast-paced game. It's dark, gritty, and a bit mysterious, which gives a nice contrast to the crazy action happening on screen. It keeps things from feeling mindless and adds just enough weight to the world to make it interesting. And honestly, Trepang 2 is not about story or deep systems. It's about that adrenaline rush, that feeling of being dropped into a combat sandbox where everything is designed for speed and destruction. If it clicks with you, it becomes insanely fun, really quickly. RoboCop. Rogue City is one of those games that immediately grabs you because it doesn't try to be fast or flashy. Instead, it fully commits to making you feel like RoboCop, and honestly, that slow, heavy feeling is exactly what makes it special. From the first step you take, you can feel the weight of every movement, like you're a walking tank trying to hold a broken city together. What's really cool is how different it feels compared to most modern shooters. You're not sprinting everywhere or sliding around corners. You're walking slowly, methodically, and every shot you fire has impact. Enemies don't just drop instantly, fights feel grounded and a bit messy, like you're controlling something that's powerful but not smooth. And that's where the immersion kicks in. The city itself adds a lot to the experience too. It feels gritty, tense, and full of problems everywhere you look. You're constantly dealing with crime scenes, decisions, and situations where there's no perfect answer. It's not just about shooting enemies, it's about being a law enforcement machine in a place that's falling apart and figuring out how to handle it your way. What really surprised a lot of people is how much personality the game has. It respects the original RoboCop vibe, the slow voice, the heavy presence, the moral weight behind every action. It's not trying to reinvent anything, it's trying to let you live inside that world. And once you settle into its pace, RoboCop, Rogue City becomes one of those rare games where the slowness isn't a weakness. It's the whole point. Atlas Fallen is one of those games that starts off a bit quiet, but once it opens up, it turns into this really smooth, fast-moving fantasy experience that feels different from most big RPGs. From the beginning, you're dropped into a harsh desert world that feels ancient, mysterious, and full of things you don't fully understand yet. It doesn't overload you with explanation, it just lets you move and discover at your own pace. What really makes it stand out is the movement. You're not just walking around like in a typical RPG, you're gliding across sand, chaining movement, and staying in motion almost all the time. It gives the whole game this flowing rhythm where exploration feels smooth instead of slow. Once it clicks, you stop thinking about where you're going and just enjoy moving through the world. Combat is where Atlas Fallen really gets interesting. It's fast, punchy, and built around building momentum. You're switching between abilities, dodging attacks, and trying to stay aggressive so your power keeps growing. When you get into the rhythm, fights start feeling almost like a dance, where timing and flow matter more than anything else. The world itself has that Lost Civilization vibe, like you're walking through the remains of something much bigger that already fell apart long ago. It keeps you curious without giving everything away too quickly, which makes exploration feel rewarding. And overall, Atlas Fallen feels like one of those hidden action RPGs that doesn't try to compete with giant AAA titles. It just focuses on movement, flow, and feel. And if that clicks with you, it becomes surprisingly addictive. Atomic Heart is one of those games that immediately grabs your attention just because everything feels so strange, like you've stepped into an alternate version of history that went completely off the rails. From the first few minutes, the world feels familiar but wrong at the same time. Bright, clean Soviet-style facilities mixed with unsettling robotics and science experiments that definitely didn't go as planned. What really stands out is the atmosphere. You're constantly switching between curiosity and discomfort. One moment you're exploring these beautiful, almost retro-futuristic environments, and the next moment, everything turns chaotic and violent out of nowhere. The contrast keeps you on edge the entire time, like you never really know what's waiting behind the next door. Combat is a mix of abilities, weapons, and quick reactions, but what makes it interesting is how unpredictable it feels. Enemies don't always behave in a straightforward way, and encounters can shift from calm to absolute chaos really fast. You're always managing resources, timing, and positioning, especially when things start stacking up against you. The story and world building also play a big role here. It's weird, sometimes confusing, but in a way that makes you want to keep going just to understand what's actually happening in this world. There's this constant feeling that something bigger is going on underneath everything you see. And in the end, Atomic Heart is not just about action or shooting robots. It's about the experience of being inside a world that feels beautiful, disturbing, and unpredictable all at once, and that combination is what makes it stick with you. Evil West is one of those games that doesn't waste time trying to be subtle. From the moment you start, it throws you into a wild mix of Western gunslinger vibes and over-the-top monster hunting action, and it honestly feels like a comic book came to life in the best way possible. What makes it fun right away is how direct everything feels. You're not walking around slowly or overthinking systems. You're moving forward, punching enemies, blasting them with weapons, and chaining attacks together in a very satisfying rhythm. It's fast, brutal, and surprisingly smooth once you get into the flow of combat. The setting is also really cool because it mixes old Western style with supernatural horror. You're dealing with vampires, twisted creatures, and dark experiments in a world that feels like it's constantly on the edge of collapse. That contrast gives the game a unique identity, like a cowboy story that went completely off the rails. Combat is definitely the main highlight. It's not just shooting from a distance, it's close-range punches, grapples, electric attacks, and finishing moves that feel heavy and impactful. Every fight feels like a small explosion of chaos where you're constantly switching between aggression and control. And while it's not trying to be a deep, story-driven experience, Evil West doesn't really need that. It's all about energy, action, and making you feel powerful in a world full of monsters that you're supposed to take down head-on. And when it clicks, it's just pure, mindless fun in the best possible way.
Smells of ticks. Gathering must be close by.
Banishers. Ghosts of New Eden is one of those games that pulls you in slowly, not with loud action, but with mood, emotion, and a really heavy atmosphere that sits with you from the start. It feels like stepping into a world where everything is touched by loss, where every place you visit has a story that didn't end well. What really makes it stand out is the relationship between the two main characters. You're not just playing a lone hero, you're sharing the journey between two people who are deeply connected, and that connection actually shapes how the whole story feels. Every decision you make doesn't feel simple because it carries emotional weight, like there's no perfect answer, just consequences. The gameplay mixes exploration, investigation, and combat in a way that feels grounded. You're not rushing from fight to fight. You're actually looking into cases, uncovering what happened to people, and deciding what to do with their fate. That choice system adds a layer of tension that sticks with you longer than you expect. Combat itself is solid and keeps things engaging, but it's the storytelling and atmosphere that really carry the experience. The world feels quiet, almost lonely, but in a meaningful way, like you're walking through echoes of things that used to matter, and by the time you get deeper into it, Banishers starts feeling less like a typical action game and more like an emotional journey about love, loss, and the cost of choices in a broken world. Lies of P is one of those games that immediately feels familiar if you've played Souls-like games before, but at the same time, it has its own twisted identity that keeps you curious the whole way through. From the start, it drops you into this dark, broken version of a fairy tale world where everything looks beautiful on the surface, but nothing is actually safe. What really stands out is the atmosphere. The city feels cold, eerie, and full of secrets. Every street you walk through feels like it has a story that went wrong. Enemies are creepy, aggressive, and unpredictable, so even basic exploration keeps you alert all the time. It's not a relaxing world at all, but it's one that pulls you deeper the more you understand it. Combat is where the game really tests you. It's slow, deliberate, and punishing if you get careless. Every fight feels like a small battle of patience and timing. You can't just rush in, you have to learn enemy patterns, manage your stamina, and pick your moments carefully. And when you finally beat a tough enemy, it feels earned in a very satisfying way. The Pinocchio-inspired story also gives it a unique twist. It's not just a retelling, it's a darker reimagining where truth, lies, and humanity all get mixed into the experience. That theme quietly follows you throughout the game, especially in how you interact with certain choices. And overall, Lies of P feels like a polished, challenging experience that doesn't try to copy others blindly. It takes inspiration, sure, but it builds its own identity through atmosphere, combat, and storytelling, and that's what makes it stick in your mind. Remnant II is one of those games that doesn't really ease you in. It just drops you into a strange, shifting world and expects you to figure things out as you go. And honestly, that's part of the fun. From the beginning, you can tell this isn't a predictable shooter or a standard RPG. Everything feels a bit unknown, like you're constantly stepping into places you shouldn't fully understand yet. What makes it really stand out is how different each world feels. You're not stuck in one setting the whole time. One moment you're in a ruined city, the next you're in something completely alien and surreal, almost like a dream that doesn't follow normal logic. That constant shift keeps the game feeling fresh because you never really get comfortable in one place for too long. Combat is where things really shine. It's fast, responsive, and rewards good timing and positioning. You're always managing enemies, dodging attacks, and trying to stay alive in fights that can suddenly turn chaotic. And when you bring in co-op, it becomes even more fun, like you're surviving these strange worlds together instead of alone. The randomization system also plays a big role. Levels, enemies, and even story paths can change, which makes replaying feel different instead of repetitive. It gives the game this unpredictable energy where you're never fully sure what you're going to get next. And in the end, Remnant II feels like a mix of challenge and discovery. It's tough, sometimes confusing, but that's exactly what makes exploring its world so addictive. Steelrising is one of those games that instantly pulls you into its world just because of how different it feels. It drops you into an alternate version of the French Revolution, but instead of normal history, everything is controlled by deadly mechanical soldiers. From the first step, you can feel that this isn't a safe world at all. It's cold, hostile, and constantly trying to shut you down. What makes it interesting is the main character herself. You're playing as an automaton, which already gives the game a unique identity. Movement feels light and agile compared to other Souls-like style games, so you're not just slowly surviving, you're actually dancing around enemies, dodging attacks, and reacting quickly. That speed changes the whole rhythm of combat in a good way. Fighting mechanical enemies also feels different. They're not just basic monsters, they have patterns, heavy attacks, and unpredictable timing that forces you to stay focused. Every encounter feels like a small puzzle where you're learning how to break through defenses instead of just brute forcing your way forward. The world itself is also really well designed. Paris feels broken, mechanical, and frozen in a moment of chaos. Streets are filled with danger, but also details that make you stop and look around. It's not just about fighting, it's about slowly uncovering what went wrong in this version of history. And overall, Steelrising is one of those hidden action RPGs that doesn't get talked about much, but still manages to deliver a solid, unique experience with its own identity and style. Ghostrunner is one of those games that hits you instantly with speed, intensity, and pure focus. There's no slow build-up, no long introduction. It just throws you into this cyberpunk tower where everything wants you dead and you're expected to figure it out on the move. What makes it so addictive is the movement. You're constantly running, sliding, wall running, and dashing through tight spaces like everything is happening in fast forward. One mistake and you're done, but restarting is so quick that you immediately jump back in without losing momentum. It creates this loop where failure doesn't feel frustrating, it feels like part of learning the rhythm. Combat is super sharp and one-hit based, which makes every encounter feel like a puzzle. It's not about tanking damage or slowly wearing enemies down. It's about timing, angles, and reacting in seconds. When it clicks, you feel unstoppable, like you're flowing through levels instead of just playing them. The cyberpunk world adds a lot to the vibe too. Neon lights, industrial chaos, and this constant feeling of being hunted make every level feel tense. Even when you're not fighting, you're still moving fast because stopping usually means death. And overall, Ghostrunner is less about story and more about pure gameplay flow. It's that rare kind of game where once you get into the rhythm, everything else disappears and it's just you, speed, and survival. Outward is one of those games that doesn't try to make you feel powerful. In fact, it does the opposite at the start. You're not a chosen hero, you're just someone trying to survive in a harsh world where everything costs something and nothing is really handed to you for free. What makes it different is how much it leans into survival. You actually have to manage basic things like food, water, sleep, and even how you prepare for a journey. If you forget something important before leaving town, you really feel it later when you're stuck far away with no easy way back. It makes every trip feel like an actual expedition instead of just running quests. Combat is also very grounded and a bit slow, but in a way that forces you to think instead of spam attacks. Timing matters, positioning matters, and even small mistakes can turn into big problems. Early fights can feel tough, but that's part of the experience. You slowly learn how to handle situations instead of rushing through them. The world itself feels huge and unpredictable. There's no constant hand-holding or markers guiding you every step. You explore, you get lost, you discover things on your own, and sometimes you fail badly. But that's exactly what makes the exploration feel meaningful. And in the end, Outward feels like a survival RPG that respects your mistakes. It doesn't try to be easy or overly cinematic, it just gives you a world and says, figure it out. And if you stick with it, that struggle turns into one of its biggest strengths. Sleeping Dogs is one of those games that instantly surprises you because you don't expect it to hit this hard. At first, it feels like a typical open-world crime game, but the moment you step into Hong Kong, it starts to feel way more personal and grounded than most AAA crime titles. What really makes it stand out is the balance between undercover cop life and street-level chaos. You're not just running around doing missions, you're actually living a double identity. One moment you're working with the police, gathering intel and playing it clean, and the next moment you're deep in the criminal world where everything is rough, messy, and unpredictable. That constant switch gives the game a unique tension. Combat is where it really shines though. It's all about close-range fighting, counters, grabs, and environmental takedowns. It feels raw and impactful, like every punch actually matters. And when you start chaining moves together in a fight, it becomes super satisfying in a way that sticks with you. The city itself also deserves a lot of credit. Hong Kong feels alive, busy, and full of energy. Street markets, tight alleys, traffic. Everything adds to that immersive feeling that you're actually moving through a real place instead of just a game map. And in the end, Sleeping Dogs is one of those hidden gems that never really got the same spotlight as bigger franchises, but still manages to deliver a strong story, great combat, and a world that feels genuinely alive. And that's pretty much the list of these hidden single-player games that honestly deserve way more attention than they get. Some of them hit hard with story, some with gameplay, and some just stick with you because of the atmosphere alone. But the main thing is, they all prove one thing. You don't always need a massive AAA budget to create something unforgettable. If you've played any of these, I actually want to know which one stayed in your mind the most. And if I missed any hidden gem that you think deserves to be on this list, drop it in the comments. I might even use your suggestion in the next video. And yeah, if you enjoyed this style of video, I've got more lists like this coming soon, so stick around. Catch you in the next one.